Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Java Energy Hour. My name is Gabriel. What a great Saturday night of combat sports. I mean, we had the Deontay Wilder Zhang fight. Dubois starting to really make a case to be one of the top contenders. And then UFC 302. Yeah, there were some quote unquote boring fights, but I rarely view it like that. I love the chess match that goes on, even in the quote unquote boring fights. And there was even if you don't agree with that mindset per se, there was definitely some fantastic, entertaining, high energy, high octane fights as well. So UFC 302, in my opinion, lived up to what you would hope for on a card like this, and I was thoroughly entertained. This feels like the moment of the gladiator at the moment, but we're going to get to at the end. I think Dana White is very telling in what he's saying afterward, in and just in general, some of the reactions that I saw from the fight itself, uh from not just Dana White, but from some of the fighters as well. I think it's really telling of how, in general, we view fighters, how we view the sport, and what they're hoping for moving forward. And fair enough. But we're gonna touch on that in a little more detail here momentarily. But first, let's focus on the boxing. So Zhang gets it done against Deontay Wilder. I mean, first of all, I don't think you can really hold that too much against him. I mean, Buddy came in weighing what, I forget what the official number was, but right, it was something like he was 40 pounds outmatched. So hard to hold this against him. Hard to hold this per se against Deontay Wilder. I mean, how would you fare in a fight like that of this magnitude against someone much bigger than you, right? I don't think a lot of people would find success per se. But I will say it I think one of the bigger takeaways from this is that it's so hard once you have retirement in the back of your mind, once that is the avenue that you are thinking of going down, it's so hard to keep that edge. It's so hard to not stay committed. That's the wrong word, but to really have that drive and to not be, once you speak it into existence that, hey, you're thinking about retirement, it's so hard to not to have one foot in and one foot out in sports in general, but particularly for particularly for mixed martial arts, for the fight game. And so that's what I think we saw on display yesterday. So Wilder, and they kept saying it on the broadcast too. They kept saying something to the effect of they kept saying something to the effect of, "Wow, uh, if Deontay Wilder is going to lose, we hope that he goes out and swinging, or we hope that he brings it for this last fight." And we didn't quite see that. And again, it, it's not that we're. It's not. I think it's almost unfair to hold the fight against him. Right? He took on someone just much larger than him. It's a natural size mismatch. So that's not what I'm holding against him. And you heard his corner the entire time basically saying, to start eating punches, which is right, and to stand more toe to toe. And that's fine. That's easier for us to say here on the sidelines. But if you were in front of Zhang, I would love to see all the people that are criticizing Deontay Wilder for not standing toe to toe with him more. I would love to see how they would have fared. Right. So I think that's an unfair criticism. But the fact of the matter is that there were moments where we saw Deontay Wilder be willing to exchange. We saw moments where it looked like, and everyone knew the game plan coming in for him, or the path to victory for him, would be to get that knockout punch. And I don't think there were many people who anticipated or were expecting to see a full round, a full 12 rounds. Uh, if you were, I don't, then well, obviously you're wrong, but I don't think anyone saw that as a possibility, and most people thought that this would end in a knockout one way or another. And if you predicted it, in terms of how it actually unfolded, then credit to you. But for me, I'm not. I'm almost disappointed that the knockout did happen the way it did. So Wilder on the back foot for a lot of it, push up against the ropes for a lot of it, and then on the final couple punches that ended up sealing the deal for Wilder, or for Zhang, pardon me. He gets turned around and is retreating. That's not what we necessarily want to see from two fighters with the amount of success. And Zhang runs him down. It looks like Wilder doesn't know where he's at after the first punch. Zhang rubs him down, gets another lick in, and Wilder hits the canvas. The fight gets called off. Uh, I mean, come on. Wilder didn't know where he was in that moment, and it would have been too dangerous for him to continue fighting. So I didn't have an issue. I don't think anyone had an issue with the ref calling it the way he did and when he did. But for someone with the pedigree of Wilder's, for someone who made a name for himself as the guy who goes for the knockout, it wasn't disappointing in the result again. That's not what was disappointing. What was disappointing, in my opinion, was that his corner had to tell him to stop being a punching bag. And again, you can't hold it against him that he's not willing to just stand there and exchange with Zhang. But that doesn't negate the fact that this is someone who a lot of people have tremendous respect for, who a lot of people have up there in terms of their opinions and views on boxing. And for him, I think he could. I don't know what the next step would be, right? The Anthony Joshua fight looks like that is going to happen never. But I'd like for him to get one more legitimate opponent, someone for everyone to get excited for. Not so that he gets the final win, but so that he gets something of a redeeming moment, and so that this isn't the last thing that we see Deontay Wilder for. But moving on, speaking of Anthony Joshua, I mean Daniel Dubois looked really good against a really quality fighter in Hergovich. Um, wasn't particularly close, and pardon me, had a mid yawn that I caught right there. So Daniel Dubois, does he now get the shot against Anthony Joshua? I mean, I thought so in the moment. I went on the X, I went on the Twitter, and I said so much. I would love to. I just want to see it. Daniel Dubois really showcased himself well here. Really showed that he's willing to exchange, that he can eat punches and um, take on power, match it with power. I would be more than okay with him fighting Anthony Joshua next. And then I don't know what we get there. Shout out to everything going on in Saudi Arabia, uh, in terms of fights, in terms of getting together good matchups. We're getting everything that we want. All the fights that we're hoping for, all the fights that we wanted to see, we're getting them. So depending on who would then win a Dubois Anthony Joshua, I mean, someone said, I forget who it was, but someone said the other day that the that boxing, and particularly at the heavyweight division, it's more exciting than UFC. I disagree with that. But for sure, some of the excitement is back, and in large part because of what's going on in Saudi Arabia and all everything that they're willing to do to make sure that these great fights happen. So overall, I mean, it was a quality card, and the Queensbury boxing, a clean sweep against Matchroom. But for me, that was the storyline. So that was the two storylines. Those were the two storylines. Let's have some good English today, okay? Deontay Wilder was half considering retirement, half outside of retirement, and it showed in the fight for for too many portions, glimpses of where you could see, okay, maybe he's going to get the upset. But I think for the most part, he looks like someone who is thinking about retirement a little too much to be stepping into the ring. Dubois looks the part, really strong performance, and should be worthy / is ready for um for whatever's coming next for him. So that was really fun to watch. And then we go on to UFC 302. First and foremost, was a little closer than I thought it would be, but Roman Kopylov does get the job done. And ultimately it's his what he was able to do on the ground, getting those takedowns, getting that control. Would love to see has someone who is very measured in terms of his striking. But definitely would like to see him work the kicks more and work the body more going forward. But either way, I'm excited to see, and it was a close fight. It was a close fight, but I'm excited to see him take that next step into being on the main card, um, in some way, shape, or form. But let's focus on the final three fights that happened. I mean, what wasn't to like about Kevin Holland? It looked for a complete moment that the roles were reversed, that he was in trouble. He flips fortune and breaks an arm. A- and you know what? Uh, Mikel, I can never say his name. But you know who I'm talking about. Credit to him. He doesn't want to tap, and he's upset because he can't continue fighting with one arm, even though it's hanging by his side and it's totally immobile. So he either broke it or it's dislocated. I forget. I'll be honest. I didn't check the report afterward. Either way, that arm was no bueno. That arm could not function in any fighting capacity. And so credit to him for wanting to fight more. But I mean, come on, Kevin Holland looked like it could have been him, who at the very least was in big trouble. But he flips he flips what could have been, a potential early end against him. He gets the job done, takes a limb with him as well. So Kevin Holland, I mean, just and you saw the excitement too from the arena. You saw the excitement too from the crowd. Um, who knows what's next for him specifically, but really great showing, and I thought he definitely having this kind of win on his resume can only help him. And it looks like he's not going away anytime soon. So really great finish on his part. Then we go to Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa. This is what I was talking about in terms of a boring fight, and some people were upset. I didn't quite view it like that. I thought it was a really interesting fight because you could tell Paulo Costa that he came prepared in the sense of he knew what to expect, and his cardio can't not be questioned because he was retreating for the duration of the fight. But it has to be said, Sean Strickland, I mean, obviously controlled it. His forward pressure made it impossible for Paulo to get anything going, to get himself in any sort of rhythm. And his corner said it, and I think he feels this the same way too. First of all, how the hell one judge scored this 46-49 for Costa? I have no idea. Because even if you give him every benefit of the doubt, I don't see where he had control of the ring. I don't see where he had control of the ring um or where he just flatly out hit someone. I don't see that at all. But Sean Strickland, really nice job of controlling the pace and not overworking. And you saw at the end how he went off to try to get the finish as time was expiring. By then, I mean, he had largely won the fight anyway. You know, I doubt even if that final foray, even if he does do that final foray, I doubt that the judges would have. Um, although it should be said, one judge did, so maybe maybe it's good that he had that final foray. But I mean, it was a fight that he largely controlled. He had um more of the action in terms of actual damage. The best game for Costa was with the kicks, and particularly in the beginning when it looked like Sean Strickland would be limping around. But just in my opinion, there were a couple times where Paulo Costa could have had Strickland in something of a difficult situation. And whether it was due to him retreating for the majority of the fight or whatever it was, he didn't really capitalize in some of the areas that I felt like he could have. Oh my God. Pardon me. He didn't really capitalize in some of the areas and some of those moments and opportunities where he could have maybe forced the issue a bit more. And again, easier said than done. But the leg kicks could have slowed down Sean Strickland a bit more. But most importantly, I think you would have liked to have seen from Costa him to use the kicks to then set up more upstairs. Because that truly would have been his only path to victory. But credit Costa, I mean, he hung in there for 5 rounds, took a beating for 5 rounds, and not as much physical necessarily at times, but just the mental agony of having to retreat, of just waiting for those front kicks, and of knowing that if you do advance, you better land and or get out of there quickly because Sean Strickland's in an advantageous position. So full credit to Costa for hanging in there, but for me, this wasn't close. I don't understand how this was a split decision at all. And I definitely didn't think it was a boring fight. It was a fun fight to watch Sean Strickland do what he does best, just control the pace, control the fight. And we'll see what's next for him. I keep saying that because that's really what it comes down to, I guess, at the end of the day. What's next? But I was impressed. I was impressed with both fighters, but definitely Sean Strickland. He even said afterward that he's a company man, that he wants more of a title shot or something more legitimate. So, hey, Who knows? Probably needs to be against someone who's going to be willing to exchange against him, because we all know that Dana White doesn't love this style of fight that we saw between him and Costa. Right? He understandably wants more action, but hey, I mean that's not Sean Strickland's fault. He kept advancing the whole fight, so that I really enjoyed that fight. Now moving on to the main event, the lightweight uh title defense for Islam. I definitely think that there's Jordan. Jordan, the number one the number one person whose opinion I want to hear on everything. Welcome, Jordan. Sean Strickland being boring. And we'll speak to that. I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed the chess match of sports and in general, regardless. And I enjoyed the chess match in combat sports. So I thought it was really interesting. And in this case, it if you think the fight was boring, I don't think that Sean Strickland's the one you should yell at. Why? Because he's the one who kept advancing, and he stood upright. It's Costa who you should be yelling at, in my opinion. If you think it was a boring fight, right? It's Costa who retreated the whole time. But anyway, Islam and Dustin Poirier, you have to give full credit to Dustin, in my opinion, because this was a fight that people had Islam winning easily and comfortably. But not only did he damage Islam pretty significantly, but there were a couple moments where Islam looked vulnerable and he looked in trouble. So he's another person who looks like he's he was in half a mindset of do I retire or do I but in terms of this fight, it looked more so that he was acknowledging that he's close to retirement, but he's saying, "All right, this is my final gasp." Where I didn't get that sense with Wilder, where right both fighters were clearly close to retirement, or and they both know that they're close to retirement. But we saw the two opposite ends of that coin, where Wilder, it's like, well, it's almost and this isn't fair of me to say, but in terms of, I hope my over exaggeration illustrates the point. Again, I'm over exaggerating here, but it almost seemed when Wilder was fighting, it almost seemed like, oh my goodness, thank God I'm retired soon. Versus Poirier, where it's like, I'm retiring soon, so this is my last stand. So that's why I want to give full credit to Dustin Poirier for hanging in there. And but he's fighting, and we're gonna get to what Dana White said here in a moment. But he's fighting someone who, in my opinion, is the number one pound for pound fighter at the moment. And he's fighting someone in Islam where the Dagestani fighters, they are well known for being able to grapple, their takedowns, ground and pound, controlling it from the mat. But Islam is someone who, sure, he's obviously better, wrestling. He's obviously better with his jiu-jitsu on the ground. That's obviously his strength, but Islam is someone with power. He's someone who doesn't mind exchanging on his feet. And he's someone who is more than willing to fight back through kicks, through landing punches, and his defense overall is good, even when standing upright. So that's what separates Islam from everyone else, in my opinion. And of course, we all know that he's looking for the takedown. That's what he's good at. That's what people in terms of Islam and Habib are really great at, do at a world class level. But this is where I want to credit Dustin Poirier, and not that he withstood the beating, and not that he hung in there as long as he did, although he does deserve credit for that. But how about that takedown defense from Dustin? That's what impressed me. You're fighting someone like Islam, who that's what his game plan is. That's what he's aiming to do in every fight. And the amount of times he stuffed him, the amount of times he nearly turned the tables on Islam, that was really impressive to me. And then he stands in there, does damage, is willing to just exchange punches in the middle of the octagon. Really great performance. And I hope that it isn't his last fight, Dustin's last fight. Um, I mean, but realistically, I don't know what his next fight would be. More on that in a moment. But what a great show! What a great showing from Dustin. But now let's focus on the champ, Islam. Like I said, that's what makes him so dangerous. His ability, his path to victory is pretty endless. He he can find a way to win. And just like what we saw on what ended up being the ceiling the ceiling move, what finished him, what finished Dustin Poirier off. It's it was something of a, oh wow, we haven't seen that before, and I doubt that we'll ever see it again, honestly, because it was truly spectac. It was truly spectacular what he did. Uh, his head is down. He has him by the ankle, and he's not looking up. Instead, he waited to feel the weight shift, knowing that Dustin would try to punch him. While Dustin is looking down at Islam, he waited for that exact moment. He just felt the weight shift, and then he spun him around and used his weight and momentum against him. If he practiced that, if he trained for that, full credit to Islam. That's almost Belichickian in terms of Malcolm Mitchell practicing the exact same play that leads to the interception against the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl. I don't know how you practice that specifically, but again, if he did, full credit to him. More likely than not, it's him figuring out something in the moment, saying, "Wow, all my conventional takedowns aren't working. I have him here. I know he's going to come for blood. I know he's going to want to try to take advantage of me being in this position. So here's my next chess move." That's how I read that situation, and I that's what really impressed me. So everyone has a game plan going in, but what can you do in terms of your first once your first pitch isn't working? What can you do with your second, third, and fourth pitch? And for Islam to pull that out, for Islam to then, I mean, let's be real. We can give credit to Dustin for hanging in as long as he did, and I think that's more than fair. But let's be real. Islam controlled the majority of the fight, and had it gone to the card somehow, I think a split decision would have been unfair. That's just how I viewed the fight, right? And we all know how the cards were last night. So Islam, what a great title defense, and he made it clear that he wants his next step to defend two belts, or to take on to win a belt in two different to have a belt in two different divisions. That's what he wants to do. That's his dream. And I don't want to comment on that specifically at the moment, only because I thought the broadcast did an excellent job. Right, there are plenty of people in the lightweight division who are coming up, but also there could be some interesting fights, and it'd be interesting to see if Islam moves up. Can he keep the same approach of focus? Will his skill set be able allow him to translate what he does really well against bigger bodies? I think that's a legitimate question. And just thinking out loud right now, I think the answer is probably yes. um, I think it's hard for me to see how Islam, at the very least, doesn't look good keeping this same approach. But it's still a legitimate question until we see it for sure. But that's not what I'm necessarily focused on at the moment. Instead, how about what Dana White said afterward in terms of being asked of who's the number one pound for pound fighter? Is it Islam or is it John Jones? How do you say it's John Jones? Buddy hasn't fought in a minute. He has a win. What? How long has it been? He has a win in 3-4 years. I don't understand that at all. Islam always willing to fight whoever is thrown at him, always willing to talk about a company man, always someone who's just Dana will say, "Hey, this is who you're fighting." Islam doesn't care. And now someone who's trying to even create more excitement because he feels like the his own division just isn't suitable enough. He feels like his own division just isn't providing enough excitement in his life. I mean, that's quite literally what he said after the fight. I mean, so Islam is everything that you want in a fighter in terms of mentality, mindset, and just being willing to take on any challenge. Now, where does Islam get into trouble? Where did Habib come into trouble? Is that quote unquote, it's not exciting. It's not a fun fight. Right, Daniel Cormier, same thing. And what you're really saying is that you just want to have two people stand in the middle of the octagon and exchange punches the entire time and see who can outlast. And if that's how you want to enjoy combat sports, if that's what you enjoy, if that's how you feel combat sports should be, fine. But then just admit it. So to then go a step further, and if you're at the arena, to boo him anytime he tries to get someone to the ground, anytime he goes down a route with something that makes sense for his skill set and something that, by the way, is working and has worked. To hold that against him or any style of fighter just because it's not exciting and just because we don't get the wow moments in terms of wow, he really gave it to him after eating 5 shots in a row in the face. This is what I mean in terms of I just love the chess match in sports in general and the chess match in combat sports. There are a bunch of paths to victory. What Islam did was really spectacular. He showed that there's another level to his game, and it really should. And he showed, in my opinion, that you can shut down one aspect, you can shut down a part of his game, but he's going to find a way to win. He's going to find a way to get to victory, to get to the victory one way or another. So that's what impressed me about the Dustin Poirier fight. And I'm not sure we get that to the same. Obviously, John Jones, tremendous fighter, one of the all-time greats. So for sure it's close in terms of just pure talent. Actually, in terms of pure talent, I think you would give the nod to John Jones just because of how he's built athletic freak, and we know his knockout power, his spinning kick power. Right, he provides more excitement. I'll give you that. And not that he needs to necessarily, but I don't think he could have done what Islam did in terms of once you shut down a part of his game, and that's obviously going to be harder because uh right, there's always the threat of a spinning kick. There's always the threat of a knockout punch. Where when Islam goes for a takedown, it can look bad because you can stuff the takedown. So maybe it's a little unfair what I'm saying for John Jones because he doesn't quite have that same opportunity. But we saw Dustin Poirier almost solve this aspect of Islam in the fight, and we saw Islam adjust and find another way to win. And I don't think, slash, I haven't seen John Jones have to deal with that Rubik's Cube mid fight. And that's something that I think is missing. And that's why at this moment, oh, and also obviously inactivity. All right. So even if you disagree with me philosophically on how you evaluate fighters, fine. You know, I hear your argument onto why John Jones should be the number one pound for pound, fine. But for sure, activity, being active, has to count for something in this sport. I mean, it's much easier. News flash. This should go without saying. It's much easier to maintain your number one status if you haven't lost, and it's much easier to not lose if you haven't fought. We cannot say that about Islam. So that's why for me, all the reasons I said, just whichever argument you want to go with, for me, when you combine both aspects, when you combine both reasons, reasonings, we are really struggling with English today. Hopefully Jordan can help me out with English later. But anyway, when you combine both lines of reasoning, for me, that's why I have Islam number one over John Jones, and why I don't think it's appropriate to have John Jones as. I don't think. I think his inactivity has pushed him out of the conversation. Now, if he's active again, if he strings together, I don't know, 3 fights in over the course of 2 years, and he looks good, he's still as dominant as he was, then we can have this conversation. But in my opinion, it's right now 100% Islam, and I think it's Dana White either showing his bias in terms of he just wants the excitement, which again, fair enough, it's a TV product or a pay-per-view product, so fair enough. Or he's just trying to encourage John Jones and show that he still supports him. So either way, I get why Dana White said what he says, why he said what he said. Slash is continuing to say, goodness, we are really struggling with English today. I just, either way, I disagree. I completely disagree. And case in point, Alexander Volkanovski he doesn't call out Dustin Poirier, but right, we all see where Alexander Volkanovski is in his career at the moment, and he gives an open invite for Dustin Poirier. So this just shows that the reasoning behind what Dana White said, and why Islam was booed, why Cormier was booed, why Habib was booed. Everyone agrees with it, and everyone is taking the angle of, wow, Dustin Poirier showed a lot of heart. He 100% did. And again, maybe it's them trying to like egg him on, trying to keep him in the game. Fine. But for me, it's kind of showing the bias. For me, it's kind of showing that uh if that's what you're looking for, then I think you're really missing out on the intricacies of and the potential within the game of combat sports and MMA and the UFC. which is fine. Again, I'm not one to police how people should or shouldn't enjoy their sports. But in my opinion, you're kind of missing out. I thoroughly enjoyed the Sean Strickland fight. I enjoyed Islam's fight, his problem solving mid fight. And this is why I've always enjoyed watching Daniel Cormier and Habib and any fighters. Like, you can win both ways. Both ways are legitimate. Trying to outthink, trying to outpuzzle someone on the ground, or standing in the middle of the ring. I love Max Holloway. Just standing in the ring, calling someone out, saying, "Hey, let's go toe to toe. I'm going to win this BMF title." Both ways, in my opinion, in my viewpoint, are legitimate. Both are entertaining. Both have merit. And so, when you're, in my opinion, when we're evaluating fighters, when we're evaluating fights, when we're giving a hypothetical pound for pound ranking, the style of fight slash the slash the entertainment value shouldn't go in the equation, in my opinion. To me, it should just be about who's most effective and who actually fares better in the octagon, regardless of the style. That's how I view things. Let me know, Jordan, if you agree with that. Shout out to you for tuning in to me on an early Sunday morning. Appreciate you. Thank you. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I think Dana White is just mistaken here, but I get why he might be mistaken. I think it's very, very most likely intentional, but we'll see. Tune in 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. We should have some of our usual cast joining me then for Provide the Spark, our afternoon show. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Sunday.